Yep.
Welcome to this meeting of the Windsor Town Forum on Tuesday, the 18th of July. My name is Alison Carpenter and I will be chairing the meeting. This meeting is being held in person and via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. Firstly, it'd be useful if all panel members and officers could introduce themselves so that the public are aware who is in this meeting and the role that they are undertaking. So I've already said that I'm Alison Carpenter. I'm also the Ward Councillor for Clewett and Dedworth East. I'll pass over to the Vice Chair.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Amy Teasey. I'm the Vice Chair of the panel and I'm also the ward member for one of the ward members for Clewett East.
Good evening, Paul Roach, Windsor and Eton Town Manager for RBWM.
Lawrence Ellis, Democratic Services and Clerk to the Windsor Town Forum.
Chris Wheeler, Highway Services Manager.
Mark Wilson, Councillor for Eton Castle, one of the three, and a member of the board.
Councillor Neil Knowles, Ward Councillor for Old Windsor, which includes Bournemouth.
Okay, thank you. I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking if appropriate. I will also ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any of the individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I am able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed. So we will now start on the agenda items. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Also, I think that we forgot one of the panel members that's actually attending via Zoom. So, Councillor De Costa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, my name is Councillor Wisdom De Costa. I'm unable to attend in person due to ill health, but looking forward to the agenda in the meeting. And I'm also one of the two councillors for Clewett and Dedworth West and Windsor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor De Costa. I hope you feel better soon. So we will, I will now ask, does anyone have any declarations of interest that they wish to announce? So that's a no. So we'll now go on to the minutes of the last meeting. And I want to find out if anyone has any issues with the minutes. Wisdom, I believe that you did bring up something that was missed from the last minutes of the meeting.
Yes, Chair. It was something very simple. I put it in my email to you and to Lawrence and to the Vice Chair. So basically, Andrew Durrant agreed to not just consider the issue of opening the access from the bridge, which crosses into the coach park to the from there directly through to the arches, so that people can move more freely. He actually undertook to look at that and to see if we could use the Windsor Welcome to Windsor, I believe it's called, fund. It's in the email I've sent you, to actually whether we can apply that money to open up this access to the arches from the coach park.
Okay, so we'll get that amended.
Okay, thank you.
Apart from that, is there any objections to the minutes from the last meeting, or are they approved?
Approved.
There was one small typo, which was it does make a slight difference. It's something that I talked about, something being suggestive rather than suggested, and it does change the meaning somewhat. So I'll have a look and see exactly where it was, but just to keep that great.
Okay, thank you. So with those amendments, are they now approved by the panel?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so the minutes are approved. We did have some actions from the last minute, so I just wanted to go through those quickly. The first one was to do with the traffic safety manager to be asked to forward details regarding concerns on traffic flow. So we've got a response from Hugh Jones, the traffic safety manager, and in answer to the concerns, these are the answers. They relate to the final scheme, not the phasing of the ongoing work. And this relates to the Castle Hill public green project. So there was some residents at the last meeting that were very interested in hearing all about this. So hopefully this will help. First one is the High Street. The High Street should not have increased traffic flow, and all traffic currently has to use Castle Hill to get access to the castle. The main difference is that all traffic exiting the castle will now also use Castle Hill down to the junction with High Street and Thames Street. There will be no access to St Albans Street as an alternative exit. There are no plans for any restrictions for vehicles. Thames Street may have slightly increased traffic flow as all traffic will need to use Castle Hill to access the castle. Pedestrian flow may be higher at the crossing point as more residents and visitors take advantage of the car-free area that is planned for Castle Hill. There are no plans for any restrictions for vehicles. Castle Hill, there is a plan for this to be closed to general traffic between the hours of 9:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. each day. Access will only be permitted for vehicles going directly into the castle itself. Access will be controlled by means of an attended gate. It is anticipated that pedestrian flow will be increased. And finally, Park Street. This will most likely see a reduction in traffic flow as the top castle end will be blocked off to traffic. St Albans Street will therefore become a cul-de-sac with limited traffic movements. Traffic will no longer be able to travel from Castle Hill down St Albans Street and into Park Street. There will also be traffic access restrictions for St Albans Street. So again, limited reason to go into Park Street. I do not know what the pedestrian flow effect will be, as there is an exception for visitors to remain in the pedestrianised areas of Castle Hill and Prescott Street. There are no plans for any restrictions to vehicles. There is a general expectation for pedestrian traffic to increase in Castle Hill as the area becomes car-free for a large part of the business hours for the shops. Whether this permeates the surrounding roads cannot be known at the present time, but we do not expect it to increase significantly unless there is an increase in the number of visitors. So that was the update for that part of the minutes. Also, we had a resident that was going to email.
Chair, there's one. There's on top of page 6. There's another action just above the agreed minutes from the last meeting.
Oh yeah, okay, thank you. So Elise Strachan, Head of Neighbourhood Services, to provide a written response to explain who was responsible for clearing up litter along the motorway slip roads. So I have the response to that as well. If the inquiry is in relation to the slip road coming from the M4 junction 6, then this is not in the borough, it's within Slough, and I believe it is a responsibility of Highways England. All motorways and exit lanes from the motorways are the responsibility of Highways England. Thanks, Lawrence. So the next one was about the resident was going to email Andrew Durrant, who would then forward the information to project works around Boswell Hill. I don't believe the resident is here, so I'm not sure if that was carried out or not. Andy Knight to forward to Councillor Da Costa on the cost of the new taxiways at Heathrow. Councillor Da Costa, can you confirm that that's been received?
Yes, I can confirm that's been received, and it was useful and was actually useful when compiling our response to the consultation on the noise management plan. So thank you.
Thank you. The next action is that the forum to investigate and change the name of the Windsor Town Forum to simply Windsor Forum. This is something we discussed at the last meeting. This is something that we are investigating. We haven't got a motion going into the next council meeting, but we're hoping to have one at a later council meeting. So we'll be able to change the name to just the Windsor Forum, because this is more than just the town centre. So we wanted to try and make it all inclusive to the people in the outskirts of Windsor as well. The next action is the forum to investigate with Cabinet on the forum's delegated powers. Again, this is something we're reviewing with the Constitution. A whole review is being done of the whole Constitution. So that'll be part of that as well. The next one was, I believe Sarah Walker asked council members of the forum to state their top 3 projects that they would endorse to help economic growth in Windsor. Unfortunately, she's not here today, and hopefully she'll be seeing this on YouTube. But what we're not going to be able to do this at the moment. What we're going to do is wait for the refreshed corporate plan that will show the council's priorities as a whole, and perhaps at the next council meeting, or at the next town forum, or maybe the one after, then we can get someone who's responsible for that economic growth plan to come and talk to us. So that's what we want to try and do initially. The Cabinet are also working on their 100-day plan as well. So more details will be coming out about that in the near future. I know that's not quite the answer that you wanted, but that's the best that we can do at the moment, I'm afraid. The next one is the forum to investigate what budgets were available for the town forum. So Lawrence, do you have an update?
Yeah, so I did ask the head of finance, Andrew Balance, on the budget, and of course there's no money left over, so the forum can't suggest like where the money can be spent. So fortunately, there's no money, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks. And then the last action was that Vision for Windsor was going to be added to the next meeting agenda. I'm sorry, I missed a question from Councillor Da Costa.
Yes, Chair, if I can just go back to the forum to investigate what budgets were available. I probably should have commented on it, but I assumed that given that the text before it discussed my comment that grants are available from central government, which unparished areas can benefit from, I'd assumed that when the officer went to investigate or write down the minutes, it would have been budgets and grants are available. So I would like to just stress that whilst there may not be budget, anything in the pot within RBWM, there is other money available. And I want to just stress that we really must go in and investigate, see what money we can get for us to spend as a town forum to the benefit of the residents in Windsor.
Okay, thanks for making note of that. So yeah, the final action was about Vision for Windsor. Now we haven't been able to put that on the agenda for this town forum, but we're hoping to be able to put that on the agenda for September. The reason for that is that the officers have stated they don't know the project priorities and future actions, and it's too early to discuss that at this meeting, but they feel that they'll have a more substantial update to report back to us in September. So I think we all agree we'd rather hear something more substantial than not very much. So that will be on the agenda for the next town forum. So with that, I'm now going to hand over to Paul Roach to discuss the future events. And as was discussed at the last meeting, it was asked that we could send the presentations ahead of time so that we don't have lengthy presentations from any of our speakers. So we have done that for all of the topics on the agenda this evening. So I'll hand over to Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to have to start with an apology because I know that there was a sheet sent out with some of the events. I've had to update that. So I do have an updated sheet. I'm hoping Lawrence will be able to show that on the screen. I'm not going to, this will be a short presentation. I'm not intending to go through every single event, but I will sort of highlight a couple or bring to the attention of the forum a couple of certainly new ones that they may or may not be aware of. The first one is the summer beach. So Windsor Yard's going to be hosting a summer beach for about a 6-week period. It will be finished, I believe, on the 21st of July, and that will stay open right through to September. And it won't be just a beach, there'll be a whole range of craft activities, events associated with that. So they did something similar last year where they had a bar and a sort of a grassed area. So they've sort of decided to go for a beach this time. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops and the interaction that has with customers. We do have obviously farmers markets in Windsor and in Ascot that will be taking place every month. So I've included that on this list. One of the other new events, again, that some of you may not have picked up, we trialed this last year, which was a vegan market. So we had about 3 last year. We've had 2 this year. So our next one will be the 26th of August. And we have about 22-ish stalls that are lined up in Pesford Street. And so our intention is to continue that. And so there will be, I think that's there only one left for the rest of the year. Then possibly we may have one in November, Christmas time, but we just need to confirm the date for that. Another set of relatively new markets is Community Craft Market in Windsor Yard. Again, they have hosted a number of these before, and they are centred around fundraising for specific charities. So there are about 4 dates for that between sort of September time through to Christmas. on the 9th and 10th of September, and then you've got one on the 8th of October, and then another one, I think it's 12th of November is the third one. So they're programming in a number of events. So, and that usually has something 10 to 12 stalls in Windsor Yard. So again, very well supported, and a lot of charities benefit from that. We have, I've highlighted this on my list. Some of you may not have known this. We do have the 21 gun salute. And for those that know, we do that every year. Some people may not know, our first one last year, after the passing of Her Majesty the Queen, used to be in April. But obviously with King Charles, his birthday's on the 14th of November. So we did actually do this last year, but I think a lot of people didn't realise. And it took us by surprise a little bit, because I think after having done the funeral in September, we then had to ask the question, when is his birthday? Because nobody seemed to know. And then we realised it was within 2 weeks of the 14th of November. So we will be doing that again. It's hosted on the Long Walk, and again, very popular event and activity that is supported by a large number of people. We then move into the Christmas programme. So we have the Eton Christmas light switch on. We have the Windsor Christmas light switch on. I have somebody asked me about Dedworth switch on. So I have, hopefully that date's right. But I've had history of putting the wrong date in. So hopefully that's the right date, the 26th. And then we have the Living Advent Calendar, which starts on the 1st. And then again, we have the farmers markets, and then Windsor Yards festive weekend. Again, we used to host, certainly up until recently, a reindeer parade. That no longer can take place because the company that we used no longer does reindeer parades as such. They tend to be based up north. So we changed the nature of that event last year and created an event specifically in and around Windsor Yards, which covered the whole weekend rather than just the one day. And again, I mean, that attracts something like 5,000–6,000 people. So the likelihood is that that's what we'll do again. The event that I have missed off is we have a similar sort of a weekend event, or a number of weekends, in Windsor Raw Shopping Centre. So certainly every weekend there'll be a range of activities in the shopping centre as well, usually from the second weekend, third, and if there's a fourth weekend, they do a range of events there. So we have got quite a large programme. We have something like 48 different event days. If you include the event days for the ice rink, that takes it up to sort of 60, 70. Quite a large programme of activity. And we are still looking, we have a Christmas planning group that meet, and we are still looking at new events and new activities and trying to do something different with certainly our switch on events for this year. And that's it, Chair.
Excellent. That's nice to see so many events. Do we have any questions from the panel? Councillor Tizzy.
Thank you. With the Living Advent Calendar, I know there's now a couple of days, stops, that are outside the town centre. Is there any scope for other businesses or organisations to try and grab a date? Yeah,
so what I would say is we will be sending out the invite. So what I do normally is we send out an invite to all of the businesses that took part last year, so they sort of get first refusal. But we do actively encourage new venues. So if you know anybody that's interested, I think the furthest one we did Woody's Cafe last year, which was probably on the cusp of, I think, where people have been used to walking out to, although we realised that there are a lot of people that walk in from Dedworth to Windsor, so it was quite a good balance. But yes, it's a tricky one, because we do sort of try and get feedback from people that attend, and yeah, there's lots of families with small children, and walking relatively late at night may not be brilliant, but I'll happily entertain any new venues. And actually, it also makes it a lot more interesting if there's new venues, because then our regulars are more likely to keep coming because they want to see, hopefully, a different event.
And Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a broad brush thing, but I know this is about events coming on. But I know you're doing a massive amount of work to keep the units filled on Pesca Street and around the place. And some of us would have seen the cafe that opened then closed, that opened then closed. It causes a bit of confusion with everybody. There's not that many empty units now, are there, really, on Pesca Street, or that are not planned to be filled?
Yeah, so yeah, we do have a few, not as many. I think we forecast certainly back in May that we would expect a lot of the empty units back in May to come online, and a number have. We've got, from my perspective, I think there are a number of units that concern me, only from the point of view that they've been empty for a long time. So you look at the Coral unit, the Halifax unit, the Greggs, although they are doing work there now. So we're hoping that, sorry, Laura Ashley, former Laura Ashley unit. So yes, that I suppose in the greater picture, it's not too bad in terms of vacancy and the occupancy in Pescud Street, but it could be better. So my focus is looking at those long-term empty units and seeing what is it about those that they are either not being taken, because we've had, as you say, we've had units open and close and open and close. So what is about that unit and other units that seem to have closed and then been taken on quite quickly. So I know for the Corals unit, it's a listed structure, so I know that's an awkward one. It's a difficult one. The Karen Millen unit, that's a very awkward shape. It's the oddest shaped unit, I think, in the whole of the borough. So we need to sort of understand what the owners are, and some of the owners are not individuals; they're insurance companies, life insurance companies. So it's very difficult to communicate with them and say, you know, what's your long-term strategy? We can sort of point you in the direction of key sectors that we have missing in the town, but we can't force them to do that. They will just go to the next person that's prepared to pay their rent for the next 2 or 3 years, or however long.
Recently as well, it's been in the news that the Hart and Garter's up. It says for sale, but looking at the price, is it actually just for lease again? You know, it's. I wonder if you knew anything more about that.
Yep. So the Hart and Garter is up for sale completely. So it's owned by the Crown Estate. I discussed it with them some weeks ago, and they've said yes, they are looking to sell the whole. So it's not just Hart and Garter, it's the whole lease. So that includes the Ivy, Wagamama. So whoever buys it is then the new landlord for those currently operating in that property. I think they've insisted that it is a hotel operator, which I think is good. The difficulty will be that those that know that the Hart and Garter Hotel, the Ivy part of the hotel was the restaurant part of the hotel, which has obviously been separated. So it's finding a hotel operator that's happy to operate in what's left. And you've got the ballroom, you've got the rooms, all of which need quite significant investment. And they don't have much of a kitchen. So if it was a hotel, what sort of food offer would they be able to offer? So it is a difficult one. They had indicated that some time ago that was one of the options that they were looking at. And yes, I think they've announced it a couple of weeks ago. So it's finding the right hotel operator to fit within what's left or available for them to operate in.
It's useful to know that it is the lease, the entire, because I thought it was a bit cheap for its location, saying it was for sale. But thank you very much, Paul.
Councillor De Costa's got his hand up.
Okay, Councillor De Costa, would you like to ask you a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. Paul, thank you for that report. It's always very exciting to see what's going on in Windsor. So I just want to just check on the scope of the future events report and even the windsor.gov.uk site that it refers to. So does its scope only include activities inside the town centre, or can it also include, and should it also include, activities outside the town centre, which include all Windsorians? And if it's the latter, well, actually it doesn't matter. Either way, how do people, organisations, groups and companies let you know, what's going on, so you can put it on the list, so we can get a true measure and of the vibrancy of Windsor, and people can participate.
You broke up right at the beginning. Did you say windsor.gov? Visit windsor.gov. Was that the website you're referring to? Yes. So
Exactly.
yes.
Does this only apply to the town centre, or can we extend the scope, or is already this scope covering the whole of Windsor? That was the first question. And the second question was, how do people get their events on that list?
Understood. Yeah. So first, the answer to your first question is that the visit windsor.gov is a borough-wide website. So it's not just Windsor focused. And then in terms of people registering their events. If you go onto the website, you can actually, people can individually register their events in the events page. And I think it does go through a bit of a publishing. So you submit your event and then it goes to the publisher to make sure that everything's completed, and then it will be listed onto the website. So it is quite straightforward. I try and send all of my information to the team to upload. But anyone can do that. You can go on there now and do that yourself. So any event that wants to be included on the events list can do that.
Great, thank you very much.
I believe we've got another question on the Zoom as well. Anil Singh.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I'm actually a resident.
Sorry, Mr. Singh. Could you just bear with me one moment? It appears that there's a problem with the sound in the room.
Oh, dear.
Is there something that you were able to do? The people at the back of the room are able to hear very well.
Oh dear. Is that better?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's you. I think it's something in our room. So we're just trying to resolve it. Just bear with us one moment, please.
Not a problem.
The audio comes out here, not the TVs. No.
Mr. Singh, would you like to ask a question? Thank you.
Yeah, very simple question actually. I've been living here since '96, and I don't think I've been aware of these marvelous events you've been organizing. So I just want to know. You mentioned there's a website. If one wants to find out further details of any of the events, is that the website one goes to find out, or is there another way finding out the details of the events?
Yeah, so yeah, visit windsor.gov.uk is the website to go to. It's funded by the borough. It has a very sort of visitor-led focus on it, but we try to promote all the events via that website.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that I also make use of the leisure centre. And the other day, I went past that, and there was an event going on there in the Alexandra Park. And but in addition to the event site, shouldn't there be some sort of proactive way of publicizing these events? I mean, not many people, I think, go to the event website. So is there any newsletter you guys can distribute to us, the residents, on a I don't know, monthly basis or something like that to publicize these events?
Yeah, so a couple of things. It depends on the event in terms of, you mentioned a couple of events, certainly an event at the Leisure Centre and at Alexandra Gardens. Depending on the nature of the event, if it's a borough-led event, then obviously you've got the residents' newsletter. I don't know if you're signed up to that, if you received that.
Yeah, I am.
So some events are listed on that are linked directly to the council. If they are effectively sort of third-party events, then unless they've registered themselves onto visit.gov website, then that's the only other way that they're going to pick it up. So unless they have on-site advertising, be it banners or anything else like that, but it's quite restrictive around certainly Windsor Town Centre in terms of putting up banners and posters. So it's the easiest way that events are promoted. They tend to be through social media, newsletters and emails.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's why we want to sort of publicise these events, at the Windsor Town Forum, and then obviously we can publicise the information afterwards as well to make people aware that all these things are taking place. And if anyone is aware of any events, then please use the Visit Windsor website, because I know we put a few events on there in the past that aren't borough-led, and they've got through and they've been in the resident newsletter and things like that. So I definitely recommend using that route. Are there any more questions from anyone else? Karen Davis, would you like to ask you a question?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Karen Davis, Cure East. I just thought if all the other questions had finished, it would be really nice, seeing as it's, I think, the first time that Paul's been to the forum since receiving his honour. I thought it would be really nice for the forum to just sort of congratulate Paul on receiving his MBE for all his extremely hard work on organising the borough's part of the Queen's funeral, and just thank him for all his hard work for that.
Well done, Paul.
Deserved honour.
Thank you. It was a one-man show. There was a lot of help. I had a lot of help, so I have to have that on record. There's a lot of people that were involved with the funeral and a lot of other of the royal events. But yeah, thank you very much.
Should we be taking our forelocks from now on?
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Paul before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Okay. Sorry, Claire, did you have a question? No. Okay. Okay, so the next item is road maintenance and potholes, and we're delighted that Chris Wheeler, Highway Services Manager, has joined us today. So welcome, Chris. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I circulated a note with the agenda so that people can have some information in advance rather than me doing a sort of lengthy presentation here. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at that. What I was trying to do was to set out sort of at a kind of more strategic level how we approach highway maintenance. And I'll just really do a sort of summarised version of that note. So really there are two aspects. There's safety, and then there's the asset life and maximising value and the asset length. So starting with the safety side of it, effectively we have highways inspectors through our contractor who go out and inspect roads at different frequencies depending on the category of road and certain aspects of it, like if it has a school on it. So that's all in our highways maintenance plan, and they follow that every year in terms of inspection. So that flags up defects that may be safety defects. It flags up things that may not be a safety issue at the moment, but may need to be looked at on a future plan. In addition to that, we have obviously the eyes and ears of residents and the public at large. So a lot of that is reported through our website, through the reported form, which there have been glitches with, but actually it's an incredibly effective way of us getting this information straight to our contractors. The way the form works, it has a map on it, so it enables us to get an exact location and exact details so that it can be investigated and actioned if necessary. So that's kind of the safety aspect of it. The one thing I would say on the back of that is, I know that there are a lot of potholes out there, which I'll come on to later. I know that people don't particularly like the plug repairs, but they do have their place. Obviously, carrying out more extensive work, planned permanent repairs, does require us often to have road closures or lane closures. So when it's an immediate issue, they need to get out there and make it safe without planning that. So effectively, that's where plug repairs come in. However, the approach we want to take is to move away from that as much as possible into first-time plan repairs. So if I move on to the asset management side of things, we've got a very tried and tested approach to asset management, which is in line with Department for Transport guidelines and asset management guidance. So effectively, all of our roads, as well as the highway inspectors' inspections, we have two assessments, technical assessments that are done each year. One is a scanner, which looks for undulations and defects in the structure of the road, and then scrim, which looks at the skid resistance. And those factors are brought together to give an assessment for each road that's inspected, and it will be either red, amber or green. The reds are those in need of repair, ambers are those that are in need of investigation, potentially for plan works, and green are those that are in good repair. Our main roads, our A, B and C roads, are all at 3% requiring maintenance, which is effectively in the red, which is fairly good in comparison with other boroughs. I'm not by any means suggesting that there aren't issues out there to deal with, but actually in terms of our overall strategic road network, it's in good condition. And that is obviously kind of the first target you have to have with your asset management approach. The approach we take each year is to use the Department for Transport grants that we get for highway maintenance and resurfacing, targeting that to effectively stop ambers moving into the red. Some of those reds, whilst it sounds bad, it's not necessarily a safety issue. It may be that it's an old rural road and it undulates quite a lot. So in fact, it's safe, but it kind of comes up on the flag, gets flagged up effectively because of that sort of undulation. But the target is to stop the ambers turning red. And through the last 5 or 6 years, the borough's actually improved from sort of 5, 6, 7% in need of repair down to 3%. So it's going in the right direction. But what I wanted to say on the back of that, and I did sort of start to mention it in my note, was that because it's a national problem at the moment, the DfT have acknowledged this, that there have been a lot of potholes, particularly in the last year and after this winter. There are so many appearing because of the rain and cold snaps, that they've given us additional grant this year, which is really good news. We've received that only quite recently. So the borough's been allocated another £483,000 for pothole repairs. So that's the first bit of good news. Second thing is, whilst we target those A, B and C roads, because they're the primary network, we appreciate that some of the local roads that people drive down every day and see are maybe not in such good state of repair. So what we want to do with the new funding is to target some of those local residential roads to bring those up to a better standard. We've been talking to our contractors about drawing in extra resources, and we've been planning that. So our planned resurfacing program starts in about a week's time, and that and planned patching programs will run through for about the next 10 weeks or so. In addition to that, we're currently confirming which roads and what treatments to use for this extra 483,000. And the last point I'll make is that they're looking at lots of innovative treatments at the moment. So as I mentioned, the issue of getting road space, which falls within my team as well, allocating road space. Lots of utility companies out there all the time who have a certain amount of permitted rights to carry out those works, particularly when there are emergencies. We obviously try to manage that, but we need to fit our works in around that. And whilst we want to repair the potholes, we don't want to bring the place to a standstill at the same time. So it's a fine balance. One of the things that we want to do is look at treatments that enable us to get in more quickly and more easily. So there's quite a lot out on the market at the moment. New machinery, new techniques that are also really good for the environment. Some of them about in situ recycling of material. Some of them use treatments that we can do with one lane where there would have been a closure. So we're looking at all of those options at the moment and making sure we pick the right ones for the right roads and lining that up. So I appreciate there is a problem. There are potholes out there. We know that. We are addressing it. And I think we've got a good plan going forward to try and get a really good improvement this summer. That's it from me.
Thank you. That's very enlightening. So I'll now open up to questions. So Councillor Knowles, first of all, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, you've got the most difficult job in the world trying to fix all these roads, and given them the budget, to end all budgets, no doubt you can have it all fixed in 6 months. So we do appreciate that. 2 areas I want to concentrate on, which it's kind of outside your control in a way, but it does, I sense it driving around, it causes problems, which is other roadworks being carried out on the high road by utilities and by BT, etc., who then repair the road, and then road starts crumbling and falling to bits because the repair's not at the same level, it's at a lower level. So I was wondering if you've got any techniques or anything you're putting in place to mitigate that. I know it's difficult because you have no say and then carrying out the work. And it does cause problems, particularly on 1 or 2 roads in the borough we all know about, with leaks recently. But just if you've got anything to mitigate against that or to make that better, the repairs actually better and managed better. The other one is road markings, tied in with this. Famously, recently, they dug up a zebra crossing to do some work underneath it and resurfaced it, but didn't paint the zebra crossing back. So there's areas like this where that's obviously a hazard to everybody. It's risk to the council because obviously the road markings aren't correct. But that's mirrored across the borough where the road markings have gone even though the road surface is still in fairly good condition. And in a way, just going around refreshing the road markings would be a good mitigation factor to make things look safer and better. So if we've got anything to comment on those 2 points.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole issue of utility works is a very difficult one, as you've highlighted. We all want our water supplies. We don't want them being cut off. Everyone wants faster broadband. So there are companies out there all the time. Obviously, with water and electric and gas, we have the issue of they needing to do a lot of emergency repairs. And as you said, there have been a lot of water leaks, a lot of collapses. I'm guessing the age of some of their equipment is getting life expired. So there is a lot of that work going on. There's also a lot of work with companies like City Fibre that are working in most of the towns and cities in the country. So it is a very fine balance. We obviously have powers in the sense that we manage the road network. So we do approve permits for them apart from when it's emergencies, and then we have to let them in. We don't get a say in what they actually do with their equipment and apparatus, but we do obviously get to say what quality of the repair goes back. Again, that isn't unlimited in terms of our powers there. We can't insist that whole sections of road are resurfaced by them because they dug a trench. So we do have a team of street work inspectors who are diligently going around looking at the utility companies. Have they started on time? Have they finished on time? Are they working? What the quality of the repairs are. So it's a big job, but our team are on that. And we've kind of, over the last year or so, we've bolstered that team. We've got some really experienced people who know the borough incredibly well out there doing that job. So hopefully we'll see some improvement, but it is a fairly mammoth task because of the amount of work that's going on out there. And then alongside that, we need to fit in with that, try to do our own roadworks as well. So yes, so could you just remind me of the second point?
Second point was about road markings, refreshing markings,
Yeah.
but also when they've done the repair patchwork after doing utility work, that they paint the markings back, whatever they may be, rather than just resurface the area.
Absolutely, they should be. They should be putting it back, so that includes any road markings. So if obviously if our guys are out there, they'll pick that up, and I'm not quite sure why in particular cases, if that was a utility work, well, they haven't. If you see anything like that, please report it. We will be on the case of the utility. It's our own contractors that have carried out surfacing or patching and haven't put the lines back. Again, we would absolutely, that should absolutely be part of the scheme. But in terms of just to a slightly different side of it, you mentioned about the liability. The way our contract works is if the contractor takes on that piece of work, they become the owner of that site whilst they're doing it. So if they haven't refreshed the lines, they have the liability until they sort that out. That doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't solve the issue, but just to clarify that point, they retain liability for that, as they do for potholes that have been reported and they are aware of and are fixed, are also with the liability of our contractor. But there is work to do, absolutely. But we are on the case both in terms of that utility management side and fixing the roads.
And just that point with refreshing markings, particularly on A roads around towns and stuff, most of them have completely disappeared. You have people new to the area, and there's lots of those. And there's certain road junction in the borough where tourists are completely confused because they can't even see the road markings properly. So I think it's quite an important thing, given that we do get a lot of traffic through the borough, that the major junctions, certainly the A road markings, will be and refreshed if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, there is a lot of there are 600 kilometres of roads in the borough. We have some investment money for road surfacing and various other highway aspects, and our routine maintenance. It's stretched a long way. Road markings absolutely would fall within the contract in terms of safety. So if it's a safety road marking rather than say something like parking bay, then they should be kept to standard. I appreciate again They're probably not everywhere, and we need to push back on that. One thing that we have got in the capital programme is a small pot of money for road marking refreshers, because we acknowledge the fact that that kind of safety level isn't necessarily quite enough actually in areas, and there are others. So we've got a little bit last year, sorry, and so we've got a small capital pot to address that. So hopefully you'll see an improvement.
Okay, thanks. So we've got questions. So at the moment, queuing for questions, we've got Councillor Wilson, Councillor Costa, and Mr. Webb. If anyone else wants to ask a question, so Mr. Bowden after that. So Councillor Wilson, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chris, for the update. It's very good to hear the programme. And I know this is something that I feel very passionately about personally, because I spend a lot of my time going around the borough on the bike. So I feel every bump in the road.
Could you speak into the microphone? Sorry.
Yes. Yes, I spend a lot of time cycling around the ward and the borough, so I do feel every bump in the road. So I appreciate the quality of the repairs. The question I had was just about the technique. It's interesting to hear you're exploring new technology, and I wonder if you liaise with other local authorities, because I've noticed that some repairs look very different going outside the borough. Yes, in terms of how you do the research into how the repairs can be better and higher quality.
Yeah, so within our current contracts, we a lot of the kind of technical resources there. So we have a company called Project Centre who work alongside our contractor. So we bring both the knowledge that they're using nationally and internationally with other local authorities and other providers around all of those techniques. The consultants obviously have their insight in terms of design techniques. So they basically bring that to us as our specialists. So that's exactly the work that we're doing at the moment. Our contractors come forward to us with techniques that they've trialled elsewhere, or they've become aware of. We're looking at where they're appropriate, because not all of them are appropriate. It's very location based, and I think that's, for me, is the answer is having a really broad toolkit that you can apply, whether it's because of the the sensitivity of the road and its use, or how vehicles use it. There's a lot of difference between rural roads that are people run on straight lines and the roads that have a lot of turning movements on them. So again, that's very much influences the kind of treatments we use. But there's some quite exciting stuff out there at the moment, and as our term contractors has local authority contracts throughout the country, and is bringing some of that knowledge and expertise to us so that we can take advantage of it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Da Costa, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to build on the questions of Councillor Knowles and Councillor Wilson. So thank you, Chris, for work that you and all your team do. If we ask difficult questions, we really want to help our residents, really. So so here I've got 5 questions, Chris, and I'll specify them as I go through. So the West Windsor Residents Association has been asking for repairs to the roads in Dedworth since 2014. Some have been done, some not, and some to a poor standard, and that's disappointing. So question number 1, does Volker still self-certify their work? Question 2 is, who audits Volker? Is it RBWM staff? And so what percentage?
Should we ask one question at a time? Because otherwise I think, we've got them written down. So
okay, happy to do that. Or I was going to do them in 3 little groups. That's what I was going to do. So the first question was really about Volker. The second one was about strategy, and the third one was about moving forward. So just that.
I think a lot of these questions are probably more appropriate to the overview and scrutiny panel. So.
Well, these relate to Windsor and Windsor roadwork, Chair. So, I would suggest that residents would be interested to hear the answers to this.
No, so I don't think it's fair on our officer who's here, to answer these sort of questions. But I think if you could I'll ask a couple of the sort of higher level questions that are more interesting to the residents, and then anything else I think we've pushed back to the overview and scrutiny panel, if that's okay. Thank you.
Well, Chair, I will, of course, abide by your adjudication. I will ask Mr. Wheeler those questions directly. All right, let's go to Windsor. So our roads and pavements are not very good. Can we see a list of the road pavements and work set up for Windsor over the coming years? And also, can you come out and inspect the roads in Windsor with a councillor from each ward? That's a fairly general yes, no, a set of questions, and I've got one more after that.
Thank you. I'll try to address that. Obviously, with 600 kilometres of roads in the borough, I don't personally know the condition of each and every one of them, but trust me, they're all inspected, and all roads are treated absolutely equally in the sense of it's a technical assessment that drives the repairs, whether it's in the safety maintenance or in the planned asset maintenance. So I would like to think that roads in certain parts of the borough shouldn't be significantly different to other areas of the borough. And as I mentioned, our road network, our strategic road network, is in good condition. I do appreciate that isn't the end of the issue. One of the things that I did mention in my note, and again, I can't really deal with the specifics of roads here, is that a lot of roads aren't adopted highway for the council. There are a lot of housing association roads. There are roads in private ownership. So I'm not suggesting that these aren't council roads. I'm just saying that I see stuff that gets escalated to me through all the reports, and there are a lot of reports that people think are within council's responsibility, but are actually under other organisations. So that's one thing. But really, all I can suggest is that if you're aware of roads that you think are in poor repair, if they're reported, you should get a response. And absolutely, again, because we have to target and bring value out of the funding that we have, not every single defect from the road will be repaired. If it's aesthetic, so if it's surface cracking or delamination where a small amount of the surface comes off the top of a concrete road, if it doesn't constitute a safety hazard, it won't necessarily reach the top of the priority list. So I appreciate there are areas out there that may not be pretty in terms of roads, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are not safe. And we do have to target our funding in that approach. In terms of me coming out and looking at them, I'm not a highways inspector, so I'm always happy to meet councillors and meet residents, but actually that's a role for somebody who's trained to do that, and really important they do so. And again, because we're targeting the funding we've got, what we can't do is look at things and go, yes, it doesn't look great, and therefore we'll put funding towards that, because then we start to lose the whole approach that we take, which has been really good and got the levels of our road condition up over the years. So it's kind of tried and tested. I appreciate the roads everywhere don't look pretty. I appreciate that that there are potholes out there, and please report them, because the highway inspections don't go down every road every day, and potholes have been popping up left, right, and centre. But absolutely, if there are areas you believe that are a safety issue or are in significantly poor condition, please can I ask that you report them, and then they'll get fed through and prioritised.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, the question really fundamentally relates to the underlying substrata and the condition of the road, but I will email you separately on that. All right, so my final question, Chair, if I may. Moving forward, to what extent are the materials and processes being revised to ensure that they're completely usable in extreme weather conditions we're starting to experience? And even that the Met Office, who is usually very cautious in their reporting, have predicted. So what are we doing in terms of climate change, and more importantly, climate resilience for our road? Because obviously, if it hits 40, 45 degrees, which it will, and if we get -10, -20, which we will, and if we get huge periods of drought or even rain, we want to drive, and the roads are an important part of the economic success and viability of our town. So what are we doing moving forward to assess the risk and mitigate that risk?
So again, this is where having contractors who are parts of large organisations that are working across the country and abroad and are at the cutting edge of a lot of the technologies really comes in. I don't know that I'm not particularly technical around this, so I haven't got an exact answer for you, but we work with our contractors all the time to look at those new treatments. In terms of the environment, well, there's the environment in the sense of the actual processes and treatments that we're using, which are improving all the time. We've already trialled quite a lot of treatments that brought around carbon reduction. It is a fairly new market, so sometimes it's quite difficult for us to get slots with these specialist contractors, but we work with our term contractor to do that. Again, you know, this is where we rely on the expertise of those out in the market to bring those solutions to us. It's in our contractors' interests for the roads to be in good condition, because the way the contracts work and we pay the contractor, they go out and fix all the potholes when they come up. So actually, if less potholes appear, that's better for our contractor and less liability on them. So it's in their interest to bring those techniques to us. I think one of the main things is that move, exactly why we've made, you know, over the years, we've made that move to the asset management approach, because more roads that are resurfaced and will have extensive patching on them are far less likely to have defects appearing on them. There is the other aspect of utility works, digging up trenches. Like when we resurface roads, we can put a notice on that to say that someone can't come back and dig it up within a certain amount of time, although there are caveats around notices on that. But I hope that's gone part of the way to answering your question. But we're working with our specialist providers all the time to look for new solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think we'll continue the discussion out of offline, because yeah, obviously a key aspect of this, I come from the contracting industry. I know how to screw a local authority if the contract isn't well written. So there's things to look at there, I think. But thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. So I believe Mr. Webb's withdrawn his question. So Mr. Bowden, if you'd like to come up to the microphone and ask a question, thank you.
That of MBE. So I'd like to thank Paul personally, because I've worked with him for nearly 8 years on the weddings, the funerals, the jubilee, and can't remember, no, not the coronation. Thank you for all the work that was done with myself and the other councillors during that 8 years. My question is Victoria Street. In April this year, under the last administration, section of Victoria Street was resurfaced from around about Bachelor's Acre to William Street. Nothing else was done. The worst offending part is from William Street to St Leonard's Road. That has been absolutely dug up, altered, sinkholes, cables, everything. That is an A road in your terminology. It's had no treatment whatsoever. It's got a sinkhole, it's had a tap and cover on it. It's been dug up by other sections. It's had a gas main put through it in the time that I've been around here. I walk and drive around that area constantly. It's a bus route, it's a HGV route. It's a diversion route for any event that happens in Castle Street and the High Street. That needs treatment urgently. Urgently in so much that myself and Paul, I think, put it on a great task that we wanted done probably from 2019. So that's one question. And before, I just asked, are you responsible for the asset management of the car parks, in particular Victoria Street?
No, my colleague Neil Walter looks after the management of the car parks.
Not the management, the resurfacing and the structure of it.
Yes, all of the asset management of the car parks falls within his remit.
Okay, I'll do a separate question in due course.
Would you like to answer if you can? Thanks.
So I'm aware of the work on Victoria Street. That was flagged up to us. There were quite a lot of new sections of damage that appeared. We very quickly responded and worked with our contractor to repair sections of it. My understanding was those were the sections in most in need of repair. I will take that away with the comments you've made and speaking to the team and the contractor about that. I can't answer in terms of the areas that haven't been resurfaced and whether they are a safety issue or where they sit on the prioritization list at the moment. I will get an answer back to you.
It's unsafe for cyclists, it's unsafe for bus passengers as well. Of course, it's a bus route and an alternative coach route now that Almore Road and Clarence Road is closed for coach park access.
As I say, I will get an answer back to you regarding the sections of road that haven't currently been resurfaced. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I do have a question here from a resident that was unable to attend, Mr. Giggins. So I'll ask that now, unless anyone else has any other questions. I don't see any other hands raised. So this is about unclassified roads. And Mr. Giggins wanted to know what is being done about the condition of unclassified roads in the borough that make up about 60% of our road network. Funding for highways maintenance is so low, unclassified road are the poor relation when it comes to funding. They're always ignored in any reports with total emphasis on class A, B and C roads. Is there anything that you can say about that? Thank you.
Absolutely. So this goes back to the point I raised about the additional funding that we're getting. So we are targeting some a chunk of that to residential unclassified roads, we're calling them. Again, though, we need to get the balance right, because I appreciate these are the roads people live down. Absolutely, there's safety defects on them, and they should be reported. And if those safety defects meet the intervention levels, they should be fixed. So I would like to think that the response wasn't going back saying that it's a safety defect and we're not fixing it because it's an unclassified road. I appreciate that people don't always like the response if it is that it doesn't meet an intervention level and we're not going to repair it. But again, this goes back into having to be fairly firm around following our strategy and policy, because the moment we deviate from it, what happens is the principal network gets less investment. And to be blunt, and this is the same, you know, without bringing up another whole conversation, this is the same thing around with service. If you grit every side road and every residential road, you're taking the emphasis away from the major network. So you can't get anywhere anyway. So it's exactly the same with road maintenance. We need to keep those principal arteries as our focus. But this extra funding is allowing us to take a look at those unclassified roads and try and get some improvement for residents.
That's great news. Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be happy with that answer. Oh yeah, so I've got another question from Claire Mill. Thank you.
Hi, Claire Mill. I'm from Windsor Delivery Group and from Windsor Ascot Maidlet Community Land Trust. I have a question about West Windsor you might be able to answer. This is a question we've been trying to get an answer to for a long time. There are a lot of open space verges, I suppose, and paths and footways on the Sonley estate in West Windsor, which is very open plan estate, and most of these patches of land have highways designation, so they are part of the adopted highway. I understand that's how they were protected from development when the estate was built. So this estate is very open plan, lots of grass verges, open front gardens, etc. A lot of these sites are still in private hands and been going to a merry-go-round of sales at auction. Now, as designated highways land, we understand that they can't be built on without going through a process of stopping up the highway, as I understand it. Now, I don't know, this is putting you on the spot rather, and it is, but it's a question we're just trying to get an answer to, because residents are very concerned that these plots keep coming up for sale, that people finally can't build on them, and the residents locally have to keep fighting planning applications. Can you answer as to whether definitively whether these plots are in any danger of being lost for development, or whether the highways designation actually protects them for the foreseeable future?
I think I can answer part of that. So I'm aware of this situation. Dare I say, there seems to be a slightly unscrupulous practice of selling pieces of land, because again, I don't know, I'm sure people have varying degrees of awareness. The fact that something is adopted highway doesn't mean we own the land. So sometimes the Royal Borough owns the subsurface, below the surface, and there's the Highway Authority across the top of it. In lots of locations, there is another landowner who own the subsoil, and we have a highway designation over the top of it. This is the situation where that landowner can effectively sell that land and may not mention that it has a status attached to it. That isn't something that we can force them to do. I know that a lot of people have been trying to get awareness out there for people so they don't get caught out by it. We obviously get people approaching us saying, I've subsequently found out this land is highway and I want to do X, Y, and Z with it. And we have to say, we're really sorry that you can't. I mean, the one thing I would say to residents if they're thinking about purchasing in that situation is do your due diligence, get highway searches done, and understand that there is, because it may be highway, maybe other status on that land, which will prevent it being developed upon. So in answer to your question, if it's adopted highway, no, they cannot develop on it without it being stopped up. And a lot of people have, clearly bought land with the intention of doing development and have had nowhere to go, because we're not, unless it's complicated, but there isn't a particular reason why we'd be looking to remove the adopted status of that land if originally it was intended to be public open space. So unfortunately, those residents get caught out, and it's because unfortunately not enough investigation is being done at the point where they're purchasing. But in the few that have come forward to us, we've just had to point them back at their solicitors and other people to find out why that wasn't flagged up as part of the process.
Lots of people are actually buying an auction without doing due diligence.
Microphone's off.
Oh, sorry. I think a lot of people are buying an auction without doing any due diligence, and in some cases spending a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, aware of somebody buying one of these books for about £36,000, and then subsequently finding out it's worth it. So, we've been trying to get an answer to say this is we determine what we understand about the process, which is what you told us, and I'm glad you confirmed that that they're not developable without going through that process. Thank you.
Yeah, gosh, that's good, interesting. Thank you for that. Is there any more questions for Chris? I'd like to thank him for answering all the questions that we've had so far. If not, we're going to move on to the next slide on the agenda, which is grass cutting. And Lawrence, am I right in saying we've just got a written update here?
Yeah, the relevant officers unavailable for this meeting, but being aware it's a present concern, they've written this summary notes for residents for the forum to like read and observe.
Okay, has everyone read it, or has anyone not read it? I can read it out. It's quite long. So, are you able to bring it up on the screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Lawrence. Yeah, so this was sent out with the agenda. Again, this was something recommended that we did at the last meeting. So that's a good idea to do. Unfortunately, the officer's not here to answer any questions that you might have, but there is an email address on the agenda, outdoor.facilities@rbwm.gov.uk, and you can send your questions through to that email address, where they will try to answer them. Does anyone have any comments or anything they would like to say about this that we can feedback? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, one of the things I guess I was looking for in the update was, which isn't there really, so what I want to raise is around the communication strategy. I was involved pretty much since early May in collecting residents' feedback about verges and then various other grass areas not being cut, and then more recently hedges not being cut. And it's been very difficult to find any information about the timing. And that's not really clear from here. So I appreciate there's a different level of cut for urban and rural areas, etc. But to have a little bit more clarity so that people know, for example, when they can expect their verges to be cut, and when hedges are being cut. So that it's a request for a bit more thought about communication to residents and potentially by councillors, so that we can, if there are problems, we can manage expectations, or just basically answer questions and confirm when things will be attended to, because there have been some fairly some pretty bad situations which are still unresolved.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've also had a number of residents complain, not just about the frequency, but about the quality as well. So yeah, it's a shame that there's no one here to discuss this, but hopefully we also invited the lead member from the cabinet who also wasn't able to attend, but I know they're reviewing the contract and things like that at the moment as well. And one of the things that we've all asked for is timings. You know, it'd be good to see a schedule at least. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've asked this a few times. We've really got an answer. We put it forward again. I think in about September 2019, we voted on a motion to plant wildflowers and verges and to leave certain verges uncut to support insect life and bees particularly. And it was voted through, we were going to do it, and it seems to have fallen by the wayside. A lot of authorities have the area and they have like little signs which tell people this is a wilding area. So people then don't phone up and say there's grass growing all over the verge. People are confused about what is left and what isn't left, or if it is and if it isn't. So it'd be just good if in future they could give a bit of guidance about how that's going to be managed, I think, in future.
Yeah, I think particularly Councillor Price has been liaising with some of the officers about that. There are, well, I know there's certainly 2 in my ward that are wildings verges. They've got signs, but Councillor Davies might have some more information, I don't know, on that.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Councillor Karen Davies, I'm the lead member for climate and biodiversity. So I've got an interest in this area. So obviously this first couple of months, we've very much been sort of firefighting regarding verges that are, and other places that are supposed to be being cut that aren't being cut. So it's been sort of very much firefighting on that, because frankly, over the last couple of months, I don't think people have been able to tell the difference between the verges that are conservation verges, which are meant to be being left, and other areas which are not meant to be left. And my personal opinion is that it's only acceptable to people that the sort of, I find the wild verges very attractive, but I know not everybody agrees. And I think that those wildlife verges, conservation verges, roadside reserve, they've got a number of different names. They're only acceptable to the residents generally, I think, as a whole, if they've got neat mown sort of grass around them and clearly delineated areas to show what they are. I know there's a few things in the pipeline. We did pass that motion back in 2019. It didn't really then sort of, it hasn't really made a lot of progress very speedily. We've got, I think it's 15 roadside reserves or across the borough that are areas which are designated as being conservation verges that are mown at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. once the seeds are set from what's in those verges, and those cuttings are then taken away because to remove the nutrients from the soil, because wildflowers need less nutrient-rich soil. So the climate and environment strategy, which we passed in 2020, aims to double the number of those verges by 2025. So one of the first things that I've asked is if we can bring that forwards more quickly, because doubling from, I think it was 12 before the extra ones in your ward, Councillor Carpenter, were put in, so it was very few. So that didn't seem to be terrifically sort of speedy. So we're bringing that forward. And we're also, I've been told that we're getting taller signs, because one of the issues is that when the grass grows, the little signs can't sort of be seen, and it's when the grass is long that people need to be able to see the signs to know. So I understand from the sustainability team that we're getting taller, so some new signs which are going to be on taller sticks, which people will be able to actually see. And I think it's really absolutely crucial that the verges which are being left uncut for wildlife to promote pollinators are really clearly delineated with a nice neat edge around them, and that the other areas which are supposed to be being cut are actually cut, so that people, know, can tell the difference between the two. So I haven't really got an answer to the sort of question, but that's just sort of from my input what we're sort of doing with the biodiversity agenda.
That's great, thank you. Got a question from Mr. Webb.
It's just a bit of feedback for Councillor Davies, actually. Would it not be better to get the contract working properly before introducing new activities for a contractor to manage? They can't seem to cut a verge properly yet, let alone manage a wilding verge or cut around it or anything like that. And I think it was answered in 2022. There was no intention of introducing a no-mow May or any type of other thing until the contract was done properly. They gave them an extra 200 grand last year to do it properly, and they didn't. And then you also mentioned that you might want to introduce some extra signs to show you're in a no-mow area. You'll do that, and you find the money to do that, but you won't find money to fix street signs that have been reported for the last 5 years. Perhaps it's just my feedback to you. You could concentrate on the things you haven't done yet before introducing new things.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. Obviously, a lot of that's not under my sort of purview. I think, the contract with the issue of the grass mowing is immensely frustrating, and it's no less frustrating for us. In fact, I'm sure it's more frustrating for us than anybody else, because the vast amount of time that we've spent over the last couple of months just reporting and dealing with this issue, which should never have been an issue in the first place. It's been frustrating. It's the sustainability team that are doing the signs rather than getting the signs for the mowing done. So it's rather than the highways team. So it's presumably coming, I don't know where the money's coming from, but I presume it's coming from a totally different. I don't know anything about road signs, I'm afraid. This is coming from a totally different, from the natural environment team. It's not coming from the highways team. So I honestly can't give you any information about that because I don't know it. It would be extending the number rather than starting anything new. We're not looking to do no-mow May because obviously they sort of more or less did no-mow May this year and without it being planned. We're not looking to, and a lot of people are saying, oh, the council's doing no-mow May, and actually we weren't, but we sort of were. I think hopefully increasing the number of verges that are being managed for wildlife and putting signs up should hope, and extending the number is not starting anything. It's not starting anything completely new, like no-mow May would be completely new. That would be a completely new approach. It's just sort of adding to the number of areas, because a lot of people feel that that's a really important thing to do. So hopefully just extending something that we're already doing wouldn't be quite the same as introducing something completely new. But obviously I take your point. There's been a lot of failings in this area over the last sort of 3 years really. It was 2021 was the first summer that I was aware of since we became councillors, of this being like a real issue. And it's just sort of like depending on the weather each summer, depending on particular combination of weather, and sort of it's been worse at different times. So
It's on the line.
yeah, leaves on that. It's the wrong type of grass and the wrong type of rain and all this type of thing. So yeah, we really, really appreciate what an issue it is, and more frustrated probably than anybody else. But I think that the biodiversity agenda is really important, and hope that extending that, carrying on with that work, extending it rather than producing something completely new, which is definitely not a good time to do, is hopefully going to be manageable. But you need to talk to sort of, I don't know if Chris has any insight whatsoever into road signs, but that would be something to take up with highways. I think you could ask a councillor.
Chris, you might want to just make a comment about road signs, but it's not on the agenda, so we'll just keep it brief. That's okay.
That's fine. So, a bit like we were saying about road markings, within the basic cost of our contract, any damaged or defective, not serving purpose signs should be replaced within that. So if you're aware of signs that fit that category, I agree that we don't have lots of money for new road signs. Obviously, it's part of the scheme where layout changes, those new signs that fit in, that sort of thing. But again, it's very difficult without knowing specifics. If you've reported it and you've had an answer to say that it's not going to be repaired, I'd like to think that has got an explanation with it as to why.
So I've reported quite a few road signs that aren't readable. So people, can't see what the name of the road is. I've been told they'll be fixed within 3 months. That I think I reported them. Well, one was last year, but one was in February. But also there's signs like there's a one-way sign missing. There's an arrow, but the sign that says one way isn't readable. And I've seen quite a few people come out of the end of Springfield Road, come out and try and turn right because they don't realise. So I would say that is a safety issue, but it hasn't. So there's lots of examples. They have all been reported, but none of them have been actioned. So.
If they've been reported online and you haven't, the issue hasn't been addressed, and particularly if there's like a little collection of these, please can you email them to highways@rwm.gov.uk, and I'll get officers to investigate. Because certainly that should be happening if it's a safety issue. If it's either unreadable or actually it's something that is part of the way the traffic needs to move and they can't see it, then certainly should be being dealt with. So that isn't an acceptable answer if it is a safety defect.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, we'll take that. So, Councillor De Costa, you've got a question, but bear in mind there's no officer here to answer it. So go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, thank you very much for the comments from everyone, especially Councillor Wilson. I think again, speaking as a contractor, former contractor in a local government field, it's clear to me that there's a breakdown here between the performance of the contractor, the wording of the contract management, and of course, RBWM staffing issues. So in relation to grass cutting, it would be really useful to bring this back to the next panel for an update with the officers, because residents, I'm sure, would appreciate hearing that. We can all, as councils, deal with this offline, but residents won't get to see that. So it would be useful to have this brought back with an officer to the next panel if we could. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, sorry, Councillor Wilson's got one more question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick sort of build from Councillor De Costa and Mr. Webb, picking up the fact that if we've been paying the contractor more this year, that their performance seems to have deteriorated. I think the obvious question that a lot of residents would like to know is, what has the council got back from the contractor?
Yeah, so we'll take that offline and hopefully that will come up in the next meeting. So the next item on the agenda is resident questions, and this is really where residents are invited to make suggestions on the agenda for future town forum meetings, things that you would like to see. These are your meetings. They're not meetings for us. So, you know, if any residents have any ideas for topics they would like to see, so yes, would you like to turn your microphone on and introduce yourself? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wilma Dunn. I'm a local resident on Kings Road. 2 or 3 years ago, I owned an electric vehicle and had to let it go because the infrastructure wasn't here to charge a vehicle. So I was absolutely delighted when Francis Road 6 electric vehicle came base. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to use them. You're aware of this year. So I work from home on Friday and Monday. So I'm home Friday, Saturday, we can't charge a vehicle. In my 2 months of ownership of this self-controlled electric vehicles, I've been able to actually charge the vehicle 3 times to make it out of them. So the 6 charging points, and they are at the Kings Road end of Francis Road, and that's one of the remaining streets that still have pay and display. So then they wanted to go to the long walk. Wow, there's a lovely electric way that I can pay and display on. So it's a facility that's probably cost a huge deal of money, but it's completely underutilised, and I still need to drive to South Bucks to charge an electric vehicle, which is really quite frustrating. So day or night, and it isn't because there isn't any spaces, there are other parking spaces, and I've seen that for myself, especially during the day, but it's just much more convenient. So could any of those spaces be allocated just as charging points only? Just, it's in everybody's best interest, because there's obviously income that can be generated.
Yeah, I know, I did ask that question before, and I know it's something that's being looked into. Do either of you, Councillor Davis?
Yeah, thank you. I know, so again, obviously highways isn't my area specifically, but I know that we're very keen to get more electric charging points across the borough. I understand that we have in the borough quite a high level of ownership of electric vehicles and quite a low level of chargers. So that's something that we're really keen to take forward. I believe there's a strategy that's coming forward or being reviewed for that, but I don't have, it's not my area, so I don't have the details. Do you know, I don't know whether you know, Wilma, there are, I believe, 9 charging points in the parking underneath this building that are available at weekends.
Yeah, but there's all sorts of complications with all that in terms of charges. It's just been saying that there's 6. Well, it's cost a lot of money to have 6 charging bays that that you can also pay and display for petrol or diesel vehicles, and that the local authority isn't allowed to tap into that resource of generating some income from it, and local residents who have electric vehicles can't actually use it because somebody's put a £2 pay and display ticket on the vehicle and can park there. It just seems like a really bad use of that resource.
Yeah, there's another resident that lives in the town centre who's been doing a survey of the parking spaces near him, who's an LOE EV owner, and he is doing a survey of the spaces that are near to him, and he refers to them as being iced up if they've got ICE vehicles parked there. So they've been doing like an informal survey, and did forward me the results of the amount of time that those parking spaces that are near where he lives are iced up. So it is definitely an issue. Perhaps that's something we could ask for some more information on to be fed back at the next meeting, because I don't know the details, but you could also perhaps connect with Councillor Wilson, who is one of your ward councillors, and that's something that could be looked into at a more local level as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, gentlemen, would you like to come and introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Donald Elland, and I'm a blow into the borough. I just moved here last year, but one of my friends has lived here quite some time, so you can blame her for being me being here. A couple of things I'd just like to raise. One, which is the rats in Alexander Park. There are a serious amount of rats in Alexander Park. I reported it to the council, sent them the videos of them, and they came out and inspected it and came back and said they can't do anything about it. They acknowledge the rats are, but they can't do anything about it. As I understand it, if they were private property, that have to be dealt with, and particularly because some of it actually backs on to food restaurants. And inside this is the area just beyond where the tennis courts are. So I've also raised it with the council, and I can say, I'm not getting anywhere. It seems to be the solution was put lids on bins, but the rats are in nests, they're not in bins. Yeah, so.
Okay, I don't know who you reported it to. Obviously, Councillor Wilson's the water councillor. I don't know if you've got any information that you can share.
Yes, I remember seeing the correspondence. I think Councillor Devon Davis was handling it primarily. I do remember, reading that it was a relatively tricky problem, and that obviously isolating or keeping the bins more. Keeping the integrity of the bins better could potentially help. But I didn't accept that the answer clearly wasn't what you were looking for in that sense. It is a bit of a tricky problem. Obviously, Alexander Gardens is a more of a natural space, and it's close to the river and everything else. So,
if they're on council property and if they're on private property, it might be the situation might be slightly different than that. You would insist on having it dealt with.
That I'm not sure about. I don't know.
But we can take your question, and we'll come back to you. Yeah, if you leave your details. So do you have a second question, and then we've got a question online.
Yeah, two more questions for me, just very quickly.
Oh, hold on, sorry, Paul, do you have a response?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chair, that the Alexander Garden issue hasn't been raised with me, so I haven't picked that up, but we have had other issues in other parts of the town which we are trying to pick up with the environmental team. I know we've had reports at the Guildhall Island and the churchyard, so we're picking up those areas as well. So I can quite happily sort of add that to the list and maybe come back to you.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to ask your second question, thank you.
The second one is just sort of something that could be on a future agenda, is the strategy for high-speed broadband in the centre of town. And particularly as well, because in some areas you pick up 3G and that's been turned off. And we live in the centre of town and BT can't deliver high-speed broadband and they blame it on the council. Okay. And the second thing is, so the final one is a bit of aesthetics around this, is the town looked wonderful during the coronation, but there's some flags displayed from buildings that are older than I am. And does the council have any control over that, particularly the NatWest Bank? Nice.
Do you know anything about that?
I don't know specific, but funny enough, I was looking at NatWest Bank just yesterday, and I was discussing with a colleague about I mean, in terms of planning, it's a strange one. So any country flags don't require planning permission. Any flags that have branding on do require planning permission or advertising consent. In terms of how they look after them, there isn't any sort of legislation that's in place to force people to look after them. The NatWest one are particularly hard because obviously the bank is now closed, and the residential properties that I believe have sort of been established, I don't think have any responsibility to look after them either. So the conversation I was having yesterday was taking the details of the landlord to see if we could get them to either remove that particular flag or unfurl it so that it sits properly. But I think they've got 2 poles and 1 flag. So yeah,
flags.
Yeah. So, but yes, I am looking at that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor TV.
Just as we're on the subject of flags, I know that a few residents have been concerned about a lack of a flag flying above the Guildhall, and it is something that I've been pursuing with the facilities manager to get the flag back up. There is a flag, it just hasn't gone up yet, so I'll be chasing that.
Okay, that's great. So Mr. Webb was next. Can you put your microphone on, please?
I'd like to ask if we could bring whoever's responsible for the digital strategy in the borough to the forum to explain what their strategy is. There used to be, under the last administration, somebody in charge of that, but I couldn't see anybody who's responsible for it at the moment.
I think that it comes under the lead member for that is Councillor Hill. Under, are you talking about?
I'm talking about being able to get high-speed broadband, 5G, those types of issues.
Yeah, so it's something we can bring up in the overview and scrutiny panel perhaps as well. It's something we can look at, and then we can. Sorry. Yeah, but we can ask an officer to come to the next meeting to discuss that as a topic as well. Okay. Claire, would you like to ask a question? Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, gentleman at the end. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. If you'd like to come and introduce yourself on the microphone, thank you.
So Nigel Griffin, a local resident in Windsor. Could we ask that somebody from the trees department comes to make a presentation to this august body, please? Batches Acre, not very far from here. There's already one cherry tree being cut down, dead. No one is dying. I've been in contact with the trees department, and they said, well, they did make a visit and said, oh yeah, we agree, but there's no money in the budget for a replacement of a tree. It'd be nice to know if there's a proper strategy for trees in Windsor. Most was they said, well, you could always plant, get a team together, plant them. The charge is £580. So I think we need some explanation here.
Okay, yeah, that's a good topic. We'll try and add that to a future agenda. Thank you. Claire, did you have? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Belden. Would you like to come and ask your question? Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, just I have two questions actually. First one is I don't know whether Councillor Mark Wilson can update us on the situation about the walkway between Elmer Road and Vanstart Road, the one that's been tarmacked without planning permission. This was a footpath that goes between Elmer Road and Vanstart Road via the College Overspill car park and the Clarence Medical Centre. It cuts through, and up until recently it was a footpath down the middle with two wide glass verges either side, and all of a sudden someone's tarmacked over half of it, moved over a load of street furniture, and it turns out they've done it without any planning permission at all. I know Wilson's been dealing with it. We believe that an enforcement notice has been served, but we don't know what's happening or if there's any update on there, and how long it's likely to take.
Yes, I can give a brief update. Thank you, Claire, for the question. So I followed up with the planning enforcement team probably about 10 days, 2 weeks ago, and they were at that point still trying to actually make contact with the various parties involved. So enforcement are certainly looking at it and working on it, but so far I've been unable to actually communicate to the landowners at this point. You're absolutely right in terms of that. It was not an approved piece of work, and yeah, enforcement are on. So I'll follow up again tomorrow just to see whether they've got any update. But anytime you get an update, I'll certainly pass that on.
I do have
That's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
It's okay. It's not about that actually, but it's near there. I'm not sure if everyone's aware about the current consultation that's going on between the new owners or developers of the former Ranco's McDougall site on Alma Road, which was had planning permission for offices and a large number of apartments for built to rent. New people have taken it over and are consulting at the moment with residents prior to, I think, putting in another planning application. And that we just wanted to make people aware as well, and just find out the new proposal is going to be even higher than the one that was put in on appeal, which had 7 stories. So that's actually higher than Sawyers Close. And this is right on the edge of the conservation area. No application's gone in yet, as far as we know. But there is consultations between the developer and the residents. And there is a lot of concerned people out there about the density and height of what's proposed. We just wanted to know whether there's any borough has a height strategy that covers Windsor. Don't think it does, but just wondered whether we could perhaps at some point as well, maybe in the next, might be too late in the next forum, because that's not until September. But whether there's anything we can do to feed in a more formal sense from the borough to this process.
I can answer because I have nothing to do with planning at the moment, but there is a draft for buildings policy. It hasn't yet been adopted, which is on its way to being adopted. But I went down to visit the consultation. There weren't many people there, but it was lunchtime and the chip shop was open, I suppose. But the main thing is this buy to rent rental properties, and 50% of the site, and the rest of the site is sheltered housing, care homes. It comes to the fact, do we need any more? And also, as you said, it's adding, I think, up to 7 stories now, the total height of the thing. And it comes down to the old vexed problem of car parking in the area as well, as we know, because Yogersville just ends up on Alma Road and round all the back road. So, it's just one of those things. No doubt they've allowed the original application to lapse, so it's about to run out, I believe, isn't it? I think from 2019, would you say? It was on the panel there. So it's a new broom. Something needs doing with it because it's a bit of a scar on the face of the town, but I'm not sure if that's it. Haven't had a look at it, but I'm completely neutral for this.
Okay, thank you. So do you have any other questions? Mr. Bowden, would you like to ask your question? Thank you.
Mentioned, good evening again, the Victoria Street car park. In the last few days, they've been resurfacing the top level. I don't suppose I know everything, but that would have a lead time of at least 3 months to get that work done. And I wasn't aware of it as a councillor up until April. Hope you're surprised as well that there are resurfacing on the top of it. And also walking past this evening here, there's pneumatic drills going on at the same time. Because when Nicholson's had the problem in Maidenhead, I specifically asked the lead member for the car parks, etc. Is there going to be a structural survey of Victoria Street? Because it was built at the same time. It's a concrete one. It's already showing internal parts of damage where the top water is going through the brickwork. I don't know if that's being repaired now. So I don't know if a structural survey has been done of that, because if Victoria Street goes out of action like Nicholson's, we are bereft of very large parking source, and the cost of a rebuild would be enormous. So I would like that to be brought as a topic, really, because it's a central part of the parking strategy, and it goes together with the lady to my right here that asked about the EV points being placed in residential parking area, and whoever gets there first is the person that uses it, and that is there. And also the ones in Alma Road that I've seen last couple of days, got hoods on, So they're not working. I walk around the ward quite a lot. Not surprising.
Okay, thank you. That's a good topic. I think Councillor Teasy.
Yes, on car parks. It's something we've been talking about recently as well, because there has been quite a lot of work going on in Victoria Street with the stairwells being painted and freshened up and so on. And obviously with the Nicholson's car park being a concern. I think late 2022, there was the team were commissioned to look at all the multi-storey car parks to make sure that we didn't have similar problems to that one. And then as a result of those surveys, there is a programme of works being undertaken at the Swans, Hines Meadow, Staffton, Victoria Street. In summary, so it's on the radar basically.
Okay, but it's something. It's certainly with the EV parking as well. It's something we can put, consider putting on the agenda at the next meeting, perhaps. So yeah, car parks generally, probably. So we'll see if we can get near water along, perhaps. We've got a couple of questions online. I think Mr. Singh, thank you for your patience. Sorry, it's taken a while to get. Would you like to ask your question, or if you have a recommendation for a future topic?
Yeah, so the first thing I actually wanted to say was that my family and we've been living here since '96, and despite car parking issues and rats in Alexandra Park, I think Windsor is a great place to live. And I'm sure that's partly because of the work you guys do. So thank you for that. So that's the first thing to say. Now, as a result of that, actually, because we are not going anywhere, so we're going to be here for the next 30, 40 years, perhaps. So I'm very interested in this thing called Windsor Vision. So please make sure that it is included in the September session, and that you assume that some of us, well, not everyone, I'm sure you guys know all about it, that some of us probably don't know anything about it. So please present it, with what the final vision is, where we are, and what's in between, and why we should get excited about that. So that would be the topic I would suggest.
Okay, yeah, that's great. We are planning on adding Vision for Windsor on the September agenda, so we should have more information by then. There is a website actually that you can refer to if you want to before that. Yeah, it's how long, isn't it? RBWM together.
Yeah, no, I'm sure some people love browsing and things, but if somebody explains it and you have the opportunity to ask questions and things, that's always better, in my opinion.
There is a website, so I'm sure if you Google Vision for Windsor, you will be able to bring that up. But we'll certainly try and provide some information with the agenda, like we did at this meeting.
Perfect.
As well. So we will do that. Thank you very much for your recommendation. Councillor De Costa, do you have another question?
Apologies, Chair. My computer wasn't quite working. Yes, please. Just a couple. It's not so much questions, just really asking for a couple of items to be considered, rather one item and one strategy to be considered for a future agenda. Now, the specific item relates to the noise disturbance of aircrafts and overflights. And we had an interesting presentation from Andy Knight and from Heathrow at the last meeting, and of course the consultation ended on Monday. But we haven't seen anything from RBWM in terms of their response to the consultation. So it would be really useful, given that aircraft flying over Windsor is so important to Windsor residents, for us to have somebody, either the lead member or the officer, to just tell us what was in the RBWM representation on behalf of residents to Heathrow Airport. That's the first one, just to request. And then the other one is that our constitution actually is really, really great in terms of providing a list of items that we should consider. And I'm just wondering whether we ought to really plug those into different meetings over the course of the next year, so that they're all considered, and we're clear that in terms of a forward plan, that we will get an annual report on planning, consultation, local youth service, transport issues, library, leisure, and environment. So those are all different items. So I want to request just that we plug that into the forward plan so that all of the officers know they're going to be delivering a report either in 2 months' time or in 4 months' time. And obviously, if we could get the police here every quarter, that would be fantastic as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor De Costa. Yeah, we'll try and include, we want to try and vary the topics. We want to make sure that the topics we include are what residents want to talk about, because, you know, obviously, if we don't have residents here, you know, that it's not a topic that interests them, they're not going to turn up. So, yeah, that's why we want to make sure, you know, we get your feedback and that we have topics that appeal to a lot of residents. It's good to see so many here today. And does anyone have any other final comments? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chair. I had one sort of possible item for the forward programme. We talked, I was participating online and just sort of listening to the discussion last time, and there was quite a bit of talk about parish councils and about planning and about things like that. I thought it might be sort of instructive and useful for all of us. I think Councillor Knowles is probably about the only one of us who's got direct parish council experience. I thought it might be useful and help to sort of inform people if we had someone to come and talk about parish and town councils and what they do, just to sort of put that out, that, you know, so people know, because we, you know, lots of us haven't got that sort of first-hand experience, and so don't really know exactly what it is that level of local government does. So I was just going to suggest that as being a possibility.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think, you know, as we look at, you know, whether we're going to have a Windsor Town Council, because we're an unparished area, you know, a lot of residents don't really understand what that means. You know, so it'd be good to explain, yeah, certainly, you know, where the boundaries lie between borough and parish councillors, and what it actually means to have a parish / town council. I think that'd be quite interesting to a lot of residents. Councillor Knowles, do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One last thing before we go, because Paul didn't mention it. The Windsor Festival begins on the 14th of September this year, it goes on till October, and the tickets are going on sale very soon. So via the Visit Windsor website, the tickets there. It's a great collection of events this year, including a wonderful evening with Michael Palin, which is probably going to be very, very good fun knowing Michael Palin. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's great. And final comment from Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry. I had a question, or a question from a resident asked to me by my fellow councillor Devon Davis. So if I could just read that out, if that's all right. It's a question from residents, Mr. and Mrs. Muse, who I'm presuming might be here. So they're on Adelaide Square, and they're interested in considering whether that could be made one way. So they're sort of, and this could be a discussion topic if we're looking at the streets. Many of the roads in Windsor are too narrow for two cars to pass each other. Would it be in the interests of the residents for the Royal Borough to investigate introducing a more extensive one-way system around the town centre? So that's the same topic for future, or to integrate into the traffic review.
Okay, I know that certainly we can get someone to come out and review that, and we're doing that with a couple of roads in the ward that I represent, to see if it's possible to get someone to come out and review. Yeah, Councillor De Costa, you've still got your hand up. Do you have another point before we close?
Oh yes, it was just before we close. Just wanted to make sure that we've still got this item to report on in terms of research grants available from central government that we can be used at the Windsor Town Forum. That's taken forward as an action point, please.
Yeah, so that was as part of the minutes we discussed that, but who did you want to action that?
I presume it would be one of the officers. I understand that we may have somebody who looks at grants specifically, and you know, that might fall more easily within their remit, or whichever officers is responsible for this forum.
Councillor De Costa, I can investigate / ask about like who handles grants, and as you mentioned, grants from central governments, what they are and if like what's available. I'll go and ask about that.
Great, thank you. And if you need me to help, I'm happy to sort of help as well.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for your attendance this evening. It was great to see so many of you here, and hopefully lots of you are watching on YouTube as well. The next meeting will be on the 19th of September, again in person here at 6:30. And then the meeting after that will be on the 8th of November. So we look forward to seeing you all on the 19th of September. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you all.